So, in this segment, we're going to be talking about the UK going over 100,000 COVID deaths, and we're going to be talking a bit about Boris Johnson. We're going to be talking about client journalism, and we're going to be talking about the lies and the people who have believed the lies when it comes to this pandemic. So there's a lot to go through, a lot of video clips. Some of the audio is not perfect. The next clip, not this one, the one after this one, it's only got left side audio, so shouts out ITV for that one. But that's not important right now. I can roast ITV another time. So it's Boris Johnson talking about the 100,000 deaths in the UK from COVID.
I'm sorry to have to tell you that today the number of deaths recorded from COVID in the UK has surpassed 100,000. And it's hard to compute the sorrow contained in that grim statistic.
I mean, honestly, he kind of looks like he doesn't really care that much, to be honest. We go to this clip here where Boris Johnson says I'll just play it.
I should just really repeat that I am deeply sorry for every life that has been lost, and of course, as Prime Minister, I take full responsibility for everything that the government has done. What I can tell you is that we truly did everything we could and continue to do everything that we can.
See, that's a lie right there. And him, saying that I'm sorry this has happened and I did my best and all this stuff. What this kind of sounds like is a guy who's not really apologising, saying, I did everything I could. Why are you getting mad at me? You can't be mad at me. I did my best. And we've got, this is what this reminds me of.
I'd like to take this chance to apologise to absolutely nobody.
That's what it kind of reminds me of, that he's not really apologising, is it? If he's saying, I did my best. What more can you ask from me? I did my best. We worked really hard. We exhausted everything that we could do. You can't be mad at me. I'm sorry that people have died. He said at the start of this, loved ones will be lost. He was a guy talking about herd immunity and all this stuff. And, this is the outcome. You put the economy above people, and instead what happened? The economy tanked, and people died. You got the worst of both worlds. You got the reverse of Miley Cyrus's best of both worlds. That's what happened here. It's just shocking stuff here. It just really irritates me that it's come to this. It really irritates me it's come to this. We got this article here, which is decent, from the BBC for once, which is poor decisions to blame for the UK death toll, a scientist says. So, a legacy of poor decisions by the UK before and during the pandemic led to one of the worst death rates in the world, scientists have said. So Labour also criticised monumental mistakes by the Prime Minister. And I don't want to see anyone in the comments saying, oh, but imagine it was Labour. Shut up. Get out. Leave the video. Don't come back to this channel. If I see you comment that, I will ban you from this channel. I do not care. You will get hidden from this channel. No one will see your comments. No one will see your stupid comments. Getting real tired of people saying, oh, Boris did his best. But what about Corbyn? Don't want to see no one talk about that. None of you. Absolute state of people in this country. So as the UK passed 100,000 deaths, Boris Johnson said, we truly did everything we could. Minister Robert Jenrick took the best possible expert advice. Fraud, because he took the advice and then ignored it. Professor Linda Bald, public health expert from the University of Edinburgh, said the UK's current position was the legacy of poor decisions that were taken when we eased restrictions. She told the BBC the lack of focus on test and trace and the absolute inability to recognise the need to address international travel has also led to a more deadly winter surge. The fact that we let people into this country without being tested is a shambles. Absolute shambles. And we had variants coming into this country. We just about dodged the super viral one from Brazil. Only just, because it was just one variant came in and we just started implementing airport testing. So we were very close to getting whatever the hell hit Brazil. She told the BBC the lack of focus, I just mentioned that. Professor Sir Michael Marrett, who carried out a review of inequalities in COVID-19 deaths, said the UK entered the pandemic in a bad state with rising health inequalities, a slowdown in life expectancy improvements and a lack of investment in the public sector. What he's saying is we did not invest in the NHS. That's what he is saying. Shadow Health Secretary Jonathan Ashworth said he did not believe Boris Johnson had done everything possible. I do not accept that. That's pushback not only in March but also in September and December. So what we had was a government that was like, the stage were like, yo, go into lockdown, and the government were like, no, wait, hold. In those sort of films where you have archers and those really old guns where they say hold and wait, and then as you're being plunged into by the opposing force, The government are like fire, and you're just like, what? That's what's happened here. The government also failed to create a working contact tracing system. We paid Dido Harding a king's ransom, and she failed. Not introduce effective health controls at the border, and still did not offer proper sick pay. Like, could you imagine? We're almost a year into this thing, and the government are not offering proper sick pay or financial support to people who are sick. They've touted this £500 figure, but that's £500 over 10 days, which is, I think, less than what a lot of people, a lot of people that work full time actually make. It's just very. If I seem very angry in this video, please just don't blame me for that, because it's just, this whole situation is a multitude of mistakes that could have been avoided. So many. Robert Jenrick, absolute fraud. He says, with the benefit of hindsight, he said, sure, things could be differently. Bruv, you don't need hindsight. I could tell you this. I'm not a public health official. I stopped doing science after year 11 because I'm bad at science. I'm bad at these things. I could have told you what to do differently. All you had to do was listen to Sage. All you had to do was look at what the countries successful that were doing. There was a playbook. That we'll talk about that in the next tweet, from other countries, Asian countries, because they had to deal with SARS, and they were like, do you know what? Yeah, we need to come up with a strategy to deal with pandemics. And the UK were like, oh, we'll just drink tea and get on with things. That's how we'll deal with this pandemic. He said there was no textbook for the decisions made. The BBC here need to put more rebuttals when they write articles, because me reading this makes it look like, oh, there's two sides to this, and oh, the government did the best and all this stuff. Like, frauds at the BBC. Mr. Jenrick challenged an assessment by the Imperial College Professor Neil Ferguson that earlier strong action in September could have prevented many of the deaths since then. He said it was not correct to say there was not a strong approach at the time, pointing to the introduction of the tier system, which didn't work. The tier system did not work, and the quick response when the Kent variant of the virus emerged. Mr. Johnson told a Downing Street conference, hard to compute the sorrow, blah, blah, blah. Who cares what Boris Johnson says at this point? He gave his deepest condolences. Mr. Herd Immunity, take it on the chin. So we go to our next kind of thing, because there is a bit here, talking about the remembering the victims, and we will be talking about how we will be talking about that towards the end of the video, even though this should have really happened at the start. But it's important to look at exactly where the government failed and look at exactly why some of these people died needlessly, and talk about the reaction from quote unquote journalists as well. So we go here to Professor Sidhar. Sorry, bad with names. There was an East Asian playbook. So this is off Robert Jenrick's comment about there was no playbook. There was an East Asian playbook. The only shame only that New Zealand, Australia, and low middle income countries paid any attention. So there was a strategy that they could have employed, but they didn't. And on top of that, they messed up even more than that. We go here. This is Robert Jenrick saying nobody worked harder than the Prime Minister.
Of the Prime Minister on a day when
I just want to give credit to Sky News journalist. I think his name is Niall. I'm not sure what his full name is. Massive credit to him.
100,000 people have died with COVID-19 cumulatively. His words are important. He will have thought long and hard about those words. He came in front of the cameras and he said, we have done everything that we possibly could. He talked about exhausting the thesaurus of misery, another total dictionary move from the Prime Minister at a point when what we want is someone to say, look, we are trying our hardest, mistakes have been made, and some of those mistakes will have led to some of the numbers in that 100,000 total. Instead, it feels like the Prime Minister is gaslighting the entire nation at the moment.
In fairness, Boris Johnson did say that we're trying our best and all that stuff. He didn't say mistakes were made, because that would mean that he's culpable for some stuff. His name is Noel Patterson. So in fairness, Boris Johnson did kind of say some of that stuff.
No, I think that's extremely unfair what you've just said there. The Prime Minister said that he takes personal responsibility for the steps that have been taken. Nobody has worked harder than the Prime Minister. I mean, the Prime Minister himself was particularly ill as a result of...
You'd think that the Prime Minister, being 56 years old, would realise that, oh no, I'm liable to catch this. Fair enough, I am overweight, but I could have ended up in an ICU unit. And imagine what it's like for people who are, much older than me. How is this going to impact their lives, and how important is it to protect them? Instead, he was like, well, I made it through, why didn't you old fart?
Of COVID. He's worked extremely hard to guide the country through this period, but there were no easy answers. There was no textbook as how to respond to this.
No textbook, huh? I'll show you back to this tweet here. And yeah, I saw a tweet from Mariana Hyde where she's a great Guardian columnist, where she basically says that, we've gone into the politics of participation trophies where, if you try really, really hard, you don't deserve criticism, and here's your trophy for trying really hard, which is absolute fraudulent, especially when the right wing say we should ban participation trophies because they don't foster competitiveness. Well, your Prime Minister's trying really, really hard and he's failing. So speak to your boy and tell him, as soon as this thing's done, as soon as the vaccine's rolled out, resign. Let your boy Mr. Dishy Rishi, Mr. Eat Out to help out, spread coronavirus about, take charge, because he's going to be the next guy most likely. And you got Zahara Sultana saying that the Prime Minister said the government did everything they could to minimise deaths. That's a lie. It's been it repeatedly rejected the scientific advice, first in March, then in September, then again in December. The government is to blame for this catastrophe, absolutely 100%. We go to our next tweet where, Boris Johnson did everything he could. Missed the Cobra meeting in January, missed one again in January, missed one again in January. Oh no, sorry, he declined the European scheme to source PPE. Missed a third Cobra meeting. He missed 5 altogether, and then we also learned that he also allowed PPE to be sent from the UK to China in February. So it showed how prepared we were. So now we go on to talk about the client journalism. So, this is from the client journalism expert. This is a good front page where we actually look at the victims. And this is a bad front page where it shows Boris Johnson being really, really sad because he's so sorry for what's happened. And you're meant to feel sympathy for him because no one could have done a better job. No one could have done a better job than him. He's sorry for all the people that have died, but it's not his fault. He tried really hard. He's sorry. We've got more headlines here. Obviously, the Daily Fail. We've got here the Daily Express fail, which is they're failing. The Sun fail, fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, blah blah blah, and the grandparents who have been taken. This the guy said many loved ones will be killed. I'm deeply sorry for every life that's been lost. You're not, mate. Don't lie to us. Don't gaslight us. And now we go to another bit more of client journalism with Isabel Oakeshott, where she talks about these people would have died anyways. Basically what she's saying here.
Johnson said we did everything we could and we will continue to do everything we could. But is there a case to answer, do you think, about late decisions, as Keir Starmer pointed out, and as Sonia was saying there, Isabel?
Well, there's certainly a case to answer about many things. I'm not sure it's necessarily about late decisions, although...
You see, Sage had told the government when to lock down, and the government declined the evidence. They said no. So there was a lot to talk about late decisions. We've only just implemented airport testing. There was a lot to talk about with late decisions. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Late decisions certainly will come into it. I think Boris Johnson was right to hold the press conference that he did today. It makes almost all the front pages. Only the FT, as far as I've seen, and the Mirror don't go big on it tomorrow. And, Downing Street will absolutely have planned for the headline to be this very sobering image of Boris Johnson saying that he's sorry and taking personal responsibility. And if he hadn't done that, everybody would be baying for him to do so. So
what you can gather from this is the only intelligent bit of sort of speech from Isabel Oakeshott in the bits we're going to be talking about. And that is because she said that this is what Downing Street wanted. This picture right here is what Downing Street wanted. And so you can tell here that he's not really sorry. He's looking sorry for the cameras so then they can put these headlines out.
Kind of preempted that. But I think that there is a danger that some of the reporting of this is excessively kind of mawkish. I mean, the human tragedy absolutely is there and it must be told. But at the same time, it's really important to remember that all 100,000 of these fatalities are not excess deaths. Many of these people...
She's lying here. She's lying, and we can prove that in a minute.
...are those who would sadly have passed away anyway because they were very elderly. So
she's lying here a lot. And she's saying that they would have died anyway. So the coronavirus just came and just finished them. These people had one foot in the grave, and coronavirus put the other leg in, pushed it gently in.
A lot of the reporting tomorrow's papers doesn't really put it in that context. It doesn't emphasize, and I think people need to know this, that the vast majority of those who died were actually very elderly and had comorbidities.
Whilst that is true, a lot of the people who have died are elderly. The COVID-19 is the thing that finished them. It was very much the knife in the back of these people who could have had 1 or 2 or maybe just months, but COVID took that away from them, and that's the point. You absolute buffoon.
So it's not as if the scale of this is as absolutely horrific as those bare figures make it look. Just having to remember the context of those fatalities, which is in no way to underestimate the absolutely awful loss of life and the very, very serious mistakes that were made. And I don't think that more lockdown, harder lockdown, continually keeping people locked up since last March would in any way have been the answer to this.
So your answer would be to let people out and let the virus spread, and more people would have died. All right.
Go for it, Sonia. I know you want to come in.
If I just could come back on that, it's not true that these are people who are literally, people who've lost their lives to COVID, are people who are, literally on the point of death. That's just not true. If you look at the average years of life lost, for example, in terms of life expectancy to COVID, I don't know the exact figure off the top of my head, but it's several years. So it's just, and it's very hard to say to someone aged 75, well, who may have lost their 75-year-old partner, well, your partner may have had 10 more years, but sorry, like they're over the age of 70, so we can sort of write that off. Like it just isn't right to say that these are people who would have died anyway. These.
All right, that's enough of that. That's the problem with broadcast journalism, is everything's 50-50. This person here saying these people have died anyways. She's saying, this person here is right, but she's saying, these people didn't have one foot in the grave. You're wrong, and it's all 50-50 and all that stuff. So without, this is what broadcast journalism has to do a lot better of. Is either live fact check these people, do these pre-recorded interviews and then fact check them afterwards, or don't do them. And so here we have, more than 100,000 people have died within 28 days of testing positive for coronavirus. But this official government total is just one measure of lost lives. Another death, deaths where COVID was mentioned on the death certificate now totals 107,000. And obviously, once this video goes out, it will be higher. But to capture the impact of the pandemic, we need to look at excess deaths. The number of people died from all causes over a 5-year average. So around 98,000 more than expected people have died with or without coronavirus since mid-March. This is 19.6% above normal. So what this is saying is that 19.6% more people died than on average. So for Isabel Oakeshott to say that these people would have died anyways and these are not excess deaths, she's a massive fraud, a liar, and she should have been corrected on air or after the interview. They should have cut the interview part, that bit, and said, this is what's happened, these are the numbers, these are the excess death numbers. But they didn't do that because these people are absolute frauds. You have one person who is actually speaking the truth and has facts on their side, and you've got the other person who's an absolute spin merchant who works for the absolute scummiest newspapers in this country, right? And that is the problem with broadcast journalism and also client journalism, because she works for right-wing papers. And what is the narrative from right-wing papers? Which is, we don't want lockdowns, we need businesses to make money. And so she works for these people. So her narrative will always be that she's not a factual person. She never has been. She's an absolute fraud. All of those people are frauds. They don't have facts on their side. That's why she's talking rubbish. And I've just disproved it within the space of, a minute? So that's what broadcast journalism has to do a lot better for us to get out of this. None of these crappy headlines. No, no, and no. And these are the reason why people start believing that, Boris Johnson did his best and no one could have done a better job. Absolute morons, bruv. Start learning. Educate yourself. And we go here. So, this was absolutely avoidable, how the UK lost 100,000 lives. And, the key points are not listed in this article, but the key points that I'll tell you is that we had an underfunded NHS. That's 10 years. That's been a problem for about 10 years now. I don't blame that solely on Boris Johnson, but I do blame that in part on Boris Johnson. We lost many nurses and healthcare workers from the EU because of the xenophobia that Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage have pushed. So there's that. So the NHS already weakened before this thing hit. You had a man in Boris Johnson who missed 5 Cobra meetings about the pandemic, about what was going on in China and how it was spreading. You had in March, I think it was, or February, the government pushing herd immunity and then suddenly going into a very sudden lockdown. There's another problem there. Care homes not being protected, and also NHS staff not being protected with enough PPE. And also you had older people with coronavirus being sent back into care homes, spreading the virus even more. That's one of the reasons why we had such high care home deaths. So you got that. You've got lots of late lockdowns. You've got a lack of airport testing, which allowed the South African variant of the of coronavirus into this country, which has become, as Boris Johnson kept saying, the new variant is the problem here. Well, if that's the case, that's on you because you let it into the country. You let the new variant into the country. There's no two ways about it. We've only just implemented airport testing now. We still haven't got mandatory quarantining for people. We say that they're meant to quarantine, but they haven't. There's no test and trace system that's there, so it's not working properly. So if you have coronavirus, you can very easily spread it to more people before you're told you have coronavirus and you have to self-isolate. So there's some of the key problems that I haven't listed all of them because there's a lot of problems here. The fact that he kept pubs and restaurants open was another problem because those are some of the areas where COVID can spread very easily. The whole eat out to help out to spread COVID about thing, that's another problem that we had as well, which helped cause a second wave. And those are some of the key issues that we saw why COVID had spread. And we actually look at some of these headlines here. Which one was the good headline one? The obviously these aren't all the people here. Page 6 to 11. We lost so many good people, healthcare workers, so many people who had more time. And, this government played a large part in taking time away from these people, taking them away from their families. None of my direct family members have died from COVID, but I've had family members who have caught it, family members who we weren't sure if they were going to make it. We weren't 100% sure about them. And we don't know the long-term impacts of the virus on them. They could have their life shortened by years because of this disease, and in part because Boris Johnson couldn't get a handle on it. And the fact is that he bears a lot of responsibility, but it's not just him, it's all of that cabinet, all of that party who, pushed aggressively for anti-lockdowns, pushed aggressively for a lack of financial support, pushed aggressively to do very little about this illness. A lot of them have a responsibility. Let's not forget it. The cabinet has a thing, called collective responsibility, where if something goes wrong, they are all responsible for this. They are all responsible for this. Let's never forget that. And we should never forget the victims who have died. And once this is over, once the vaccine is rolled out, if the government can actually do that properly, then I want to see a public inquiry into this. I want to see exactly what was said, what the advice that was given to specific people, and what was their reaction, and why didn't they do what they should have done. Those are the things I want to see. Why wasn't the pandemic stockpile topped up when we realised there was a pandemic coming? Why wasn't the pandemic stockpile topped up at all during the 10 years the Conservative government was in charge? Those are the things I want to know. And there are so many people to be held responsible for this. Not just the people in cabinet, but former cabinet ministers. I'm talking Jeremy Hunt, definitely Jeremy Hunt. I'm talking Theresa May. I'm talking about David Cameron. I'm talking about all the people who played a key part in the underfunding of the NHS, and the people who played a key part in the inability to add to the pandemic stockpile. And I know this video has gone on a long time. I know that we've spoken about a lot of things, but I hope you understand why I had to make this video. Hopefully I wasn't talking too quickly, that people can understand me, because I know that's a problem that I have and something I need to work on. But I hope this video is very clear and very concise. I hold Boris Johnson and his cabinet responsible for a lot of the deaths that have happened needlessly within this country. So when the dust settles from this, and the vaccine is rolled out, and if we can actually start to go out publicly and actually go see family members, as soon as that happens, I want to see a public inquiry into this, an independent public inquiry into exactly who knew what and when, and why weren't the right decisions taken. That's what I want to see. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Like I said, anyone who says, oh, Boris Johnson did the best he can, yeah, just leave my channel. Never watch my videos. Don't watch my content. Unsubscribe if you're a subscriber. Just go. I don't want you here. I don't care for your views. I don't care for your likes, your dislikes, your comments. Get out. I don't care. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.